Picture this. I'm Sarah, 47, a quiet illustrator hiding a $500,000 a year empire. My world imploded when John, my husband, served me divorce papers to wed my best friend Emily. They thought I'd crumble. They didn't know I'd discovered their affair years ago, raised their secret daughter Emma, and planned their downfall with George, Emily's ex. This is my revenge, a tale of shattered trust, hidden strength, and sweet justice. Stick around to see them pay. My name is Sarah. I'm 47, an illustrator by trade, and if I'm being honest, a damn good one. For years, I've lived a quiet life in our cozy Portland home, sketching whimsical worlds for children's books that secretly rake in $500,000 a year. My husband John never knew the full extent of it. Neither did my best friend Emily. To them, I was just Sarah, the soft-spoken artist who liked her tea too weak and her sweaters too big. They had no idea I'd built an empire under their noses. And they certainly didn't know I'd been holding a grenade of truth for years, waiting for the right moment to pull the pin. It was a Tuesday when John dropped the bomb, March 12th, 2025 to be exact. I'll never forget the date because it was the day I stopped pretending. He came home late, his tie loosened like he'd been wrestling with his conscience, and slid a manila envelope across the kitchen table. Divorce papers. His signature was already there, scrawled in that sloppy cursive I used to find charming. "I'm marrying Emily," he said, voice flat, like he was ordering takeout. "We've been in love for a while. It's time to stop lying." I stared at him, my hands trembling around my mug of chamomile tea. The steam curled up, blurring his face for a moment, and I almost laughed at how surreal it felt. My husband of 20 years and my best friend since college together. It wasn't a shock, though, not really. I'd known about their affair for 7 years. What they didn't know was that I'd raised their daughter, Emma, as my own. And George, Emily's husband, had been my silent partner in this long, bitter game. "Say something," John snapped, his hazel eyes narrowing. He looked tired, older than his 49 years, with gray streaking his temples. I wondered if Emily liked that about him, the distinguished professor vibe. He taught literature at the university, always waxing poetic about betrayal and Shakespeare. Irony's a cruel bastard. "What's there to say?" I replied, my voice steady despite the ache clawing at my chest. "You've made your choice." He shifted uncomfortably, maybe expecting the tears or a fight. I didn't give him either. Instead, I signed the papers right there, my pen gliding over the page with a calm I didn't feel. Inside, I was shattering, but I'd learned long ago how to hide the cracks. I'd been sick for months, chronic fatigue, the doctors called it, probably from carrying this secret for so long, but I wasn't about to let John see me weak. Not yet. Emily showed up the next day, all nervous energy and fake apologies. Her blonde hair was pulled into a messy bun, and she wore one of those flowy dresses she thought made her look bohemian. "Sarah, I'm so sorry," she said, tears welling up like she'd rehearsed it. "It just happened. We didn't mean to hurt you." I wanted to slap her. Instead, I smiled a tight, practiced thing and said, "It's fine, Emily. I'll survive." She didn't catch the edge in my voice. She thought I was broken, helpless. They both did. That's what made the next part so delicious. The truth started unraveling 7 years ago. Emma was 9 then, a bright-eyed girl with John's dimples and Emily's laugh. I'd suspected something for months, late-night calls John brushed off, Emily's sudden girls' trips that left George brooding. Then I found the photo. It was tucked in John's briefcase. A Polaroid of him and Emily on a beach, her arms around his neck, both of them grinning like teenagers. Dated 2 months before Emma was born. I didn't confront him. Not then. I went to George instead. He was a quiet man, a carpenter with hands rough as sandpaper and a heart too soft for his own good. We met at his workshop, the air thick with sawdust and unspoken pain. "They're sleeping together," I told him, sliding the photo across his workbench. "And I think Emma's his." George didn't flinch. He just stared at the picture, his jaw tight, then said, "I've known for a while. I didn't want to believe it." That's when we made our pact. We'd stay silent, gather proof, and raise Emma together, me as her mom, him as her Uncle George who showed up with wooden toys and bad jokes. We'd let John and Emily dig their own graves. Over the years, I documented everything. Hotel receipts, text messages I'd secretly photographed off John's phone, even a paternity test George had done when Emma was 5. She was John's, no doubt about it. But I loved her like she was mine. Every bedtime story I read her, every drawing we made together, stitched her into my soul. John and Emily thought they'd gotten away with it. They were wrong. After the divorce papers, I let myself fall apart, but only for a moment. I locked myself in my studio, surrounded by sketches of talking foxes and enchanted forests, and cried until my throat burned. Then I got sick, really sick. Fever, chills, a cough that wouldn't quit. The doctor said it was pneumonia, probably from the stress. I spent 2 weeks in bed, George bringing me soup, and Emma curling up beside me with her sketch pad. "Mom, you're gonna be okay, right?" She'd ask, her brown eyes wide. "Always, kiddo," I'd whisper, ruffling her hair. She was 16 now, a junior in high school, and sharper than either of her bio parents ever gave her credit for. She didn't know the full story, not yet, but she sensed something was off. Kids always do. While I recovered, John and Emily moved fast. They got engaged within a month, flaunting it on social media like I didn't exist. I saw the photos, Emily in a white dress, John beaming like he'd won the lottery. Friends I'd known for years congratulated them, oblivious to the rot beneath it all. I stayed quiet, rebuilding my strength. I had a plan, and it was finally time to set it in motion. Recovery was a slog. Pneumonia had hollowed me out, left me wheezing and weak, but it also gave me time to think. Lying in bed, I'd stare at the ceiling of my studio, the one place John never bothered to enter, and map out every move. My sketches, cheerful bunnies, and brave little knights watched me from the walls like an audience waiting for the show to start. George kept me fed, Emma kept me sane, and by mid-April, I was back on my feet. Physically, at least. Inside, I was a furnace, smoldering and ready to ignite. John and Emily thought I'd faded away. They'd moved into her house. George had left it to her in their divorce, a calculated surrender on his part. I'd signed over our place to John in the settlement, letting him think he'd won something. He didn't know I'd bought a sleek little condo downtown years ago, paid in cash from my book royalties under a shell company no one could trace. $500,000 a year for a decade adds up. I'd been smart investments, savings, a nest egg they'd never touch. They thought I was broke, scrambling to survive on an illustrator's hobby. Fools, I started small. First, I hired a lawyer, not some small-time divorce hack, but a shark named Rachel Voss, who chewed up liars for breakfast. She had a reputation for dismantling cheaters in court, and I gave her everything. The photos, the receipts, the paternity test. "This is gold," she said, her eyes glinting over her coffee mug. "They're not just adulterers, they're idiots. We can bury them." "Not yet," I told her. "I want them to feel safe first. Let them build their little fairy tale. Then we pull the rug." Rachel grinned. "You're colder than I expected, Sarah. I like it." Next, I reached out to my publisher, Harper & Bloom. They'd been begging me for years to step out from behind my pen name, S.E. Willow, and do a big reveal. I'd always refused. Privacy was my shield, but now it was a weapon. "Set up a book tour," I told my editor, Mia. "National, splashy. I'm ready to tell the world who I am." Mia practically squealed. "Oh my God, Sarah, this is huge. We'll get you on morning shows, podcasts, the works. Your sales are already insane. This'll double them." "Triple," I corrected and hung up. I wasn't guessing. I'd done the math. While the tour took shape, I watched John and Emily from a distance. George was my eyes still friendly with Emily's brother. He'd get updates at family dinners and pass them along. They were planning a June wedding, something small but smug, like they deserved a fresh start. Emma, bless her, refused to go. "Dad's being weird," she told me one night, sprawled on my couch with her sketchbook. "And Emily keeps trying to act like my mom. It's gross." I smoothed her hair, my heart twisting. "You don't have to see them if you don't want to. You're with me, kiddo." She nodded, but I saw the questions in her eyes. Soon, I'd have to tell her the truth. Not yet, though. She deserved a little more time before I blew up her world. The first crack in their facade came in May. John's University got an anonymous tip me, of course, about inappropriate conduct with a colleague's spouse. I'd sent a burner email with just enough detail to spark an investigation. Dates, locations, a grainy photo of him and Emily kissing in his office. Nothing definitive, but enough to make HR sweat. John was put on leave pending review, and I heard through George that he was furious, ranting about vindictive lies. Emily, meanwhile, was spiraling, posting cryptic X updates about toxic people and moving on. I didn't stop there. Emily ran a little boutique downtown, selling overpriced candles and scarves to bored housewives. I'd helped her start it years ago, back when I thought she was my friend. Now I used that knowledge against her. A few quiet chats with her suppliers, old contacts I'd charmed over coffee, and suddenly her shipments were delayed, then canceled. By June, her store was hemorrhaging money, and she was too proud to admit it. Meanwhile, I was rising. The book tour launched in July, and it was a wildfire. My latest release, The Fox's Lantern, hit the New York Times bestseller list in its first week. I did interviews, Good Morning America, NPR, even a viral TikTok live with a kidlit influencer. S.E. Willow is Sarah Ellis, the headline screamed, Portland's secret millionaire author. Cameras caught my gray-streaked hair and quiet smile, and suddenly I was a symbol, the unassuming artist who'd conquered the world. John and Emily had no idea it was me, not at first. They didn't read kids' books. The money poured in, royalties, speaking fees, a movie deal in the works. I didn't flaunt it, not yet, but I upgraded my life quietly. A new car, a better wardrobe, a college fund for Emma that'd make her jaw drop. George noticed, though. You're glowing, he said one night over takeout at my condo. Like you're finally free. Not free, I said, sipping my wine. Just getting started. Their wedding happened on June 28th. I didn't crash it, too obvious. Instead, I sent a gift, a framed illustration of a fox and a snake, signed S.E. Willow. No note. Let them figure it out. George told me later they'd hung it in their living room, clueless. The irony made me laugh until I cried. By August, John's investigation concluded. He wasn't fired, tenure saved him, but he was demoted, his reputation trashed. Emily's boutique closed and she started selling her clothes online to pay bills. They were fraying, fighting constantly, and I hadn't even played my ace yet. That came in September at Emma's 17th birthday. She wanted a small party, just me, George, and a few friends. John and Emily showed up uninvited, all forced smiles and cheap gifts. I let them in, my pulse steady. It was time. Emma, I said, handing her a letter I'd written that morning. There's something you need to know. She frowned, unfolding it. John went pale. Emily froze. The room held its breath as she read the truth. Her real parents, the affair, the lies. Her eyes flicked to John, then Emily, then back to me. Mom, she whispered. I'm still your mom, I said, my voice breaking. Always. She threw the letter at John's feet and walked out. George followed her. I turned to John and Emily, their faces a mix of shock and shame, and smiled. Oh, and one more thing, I said, pulling a checkbook from my purse. I'm worth $8 million. You thought I'd crumble. You were wrong. The silence after I dropped the bombshell was deafening. John's mouth hung open, the cheap birthday gift, a knockoff purse still clutched in his hand. Emily's eyes darted between me and the checkbook, her mascara-streaked face a mask of disbelief. $8 million. I let the number hang in the air, heavy and sharp, like a guillotine blade waiting to fall. They'd spent years underestimating me, picturing me as some fragile, penniless dreamer. Now they saw the truth, and it burned. You're lying, John finally rasped, his voice thin. There's no way. Check the news, I cut in, tossing my phone onto the table. The screen glowed with a headline from that morning. S.E. Willow unmasked, how Sarah Ellis built a children's lit empire. Below it, a photo of me at a signing, smiling beside a stack of The Fox's Lantern. 8 million and counting. Royalties, investments, movie deal. While you were sneaking around, I was building this. Emily let out a choked sob, sinking into a chair. Sarah, how could I? I laughed, sharp and cold. You slept with my husband, had his kid, and let me raise her while you played house. Don't talk to me about betrayal. John stepped forward, fists clenched. You think this changes anything? You're still alone, Sarah. We've got each other. I tilted my head, studying him. Do you? Because from what I hear, you're barely holding it together. Demoted professor and a failed shopkeeper, real power couple. That hit him like a punch. He flinched, and I saw the cracks years of arrogance crumbling under the weight of reality. Emily just stared at the floor, her hands trembling. They didn't know about Emma yet. Not fully. She'd stormed out after reading my letter, George trailing her like the steady shadow he'd always been. I'd give her time. She'd come back when she was ready. She always did. The next few weeks were chaos for them, not me. I'd already set the dominoes falling. Now I just watched them topple. Rachel, my lawyer, filed a civil suit against John and Emily for emotional distress and fraud years of deception, provable with the evidence George and I had hoarded. It wasn't about the money. I didn't need it. It was about dragging their names through the mud, letting the world see who they really were. The university caught wind of the lawsuit and reconsidered John's tenure. A second investigation, this time with my photos and texts, as ammo ended it. He was fired in October, his career reduced to a cautionary tale whispered in faculty lounges. I heard he tried to get a job at a community college, but no one wanted the stench of scandal. Last I checked, he'd taken a gig on a fishing boat off the coast, hauling crab pots for minimum wage. The great literature professor reeking of fish and regret. Poetic, in a way. Emily's fall was quieter, but just as brutal. Her family old money types who valued appearances cut her off when the suit hit the local papers. Adulteress and deadbeat mom wasn't the headline they'd envisioned for their golden girl. Her boutique was already gone, and with no income and a mountain of legal fees, she started selling her jewelry online. By November, she was living in a rented trailer, posting bitter ex-rants about karma that no one liked. I didn't gloat, not publicly, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel good. Emma came back to me a week after her birthday. She showed up at my condo, eyes red but steady, and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "You're my mom," she said, voice muffled against my shoulder. "I don't care about DNA. They don't get to take that away." I cried then, for the first time since the divorce papers. Not from pain, but relief. "You're my girl," I whispered. "Always will be." George was there too, a constant now. He didn't say much, just handed me a cup of tea and sat beside us on the couch, but his presence was a balm. We'd been through hell together, him and me, and somehow we'd come out stronger. Not lovers, not yet, maybe not ever, but family, absolutely. The final blow came in December at the Portland Children's Lit Gala. I'd been invited as the keynote speaker, a capstone to my whirlwind year. The Fox's Lantern had won a national award, and the movie was greenlit with my name in lights. I walked the red carpet in an emerald green dress, Emma on one arm, George on the other, my gray hair swept into a loose bun. Cameras flashed, and for once, I didn't shy away. Inside, I gave my speech. I talked about resilience, about finding strength in the quiet places, about building something beautiful out of pain. I didn't mention John or Emily, not directly, but the subtext was there, and the crowd felt it. They gave me a standing ovation, and as I stepped off the stage, Mia handed me a plaque, Lifetime Achievement in Children's Literature. At 47, I laughed, clutching it to my chest. Later, I got a call from Rachel. "Case is settled," she said. "They're broke, Sarah. John's got nothing but that boat, and Emily's begging for scraps. Court ordered them to pay damages, small change for you, but it wiped them out. It's over." I hung up and looked out my condo window at the city lights. Over. Justice wasn't loud or flashy. It was this. Them in the gutter. Me standing tall. I'd exposed my wealth, my stability, my truth, and they'd choked on it, just like I'd planned. It's March 21st, 2025 now, a year since John handed me those papers. I'm sitting in my studio sketching a new book, something about a girl and her fox outsmarting the wolves. Emma's at college, thriving, texting me daily. George is in the kitchen, banging pots around like he knows what he's doing. I'll join him soon, tease him about his cooking, and we'll laugh like we always do. John's still on that boat, last I heard. Emily's faded into obscurity, a ghost of her old self. And me? I'm here, surrounded by love, my name on bestseller lists and award shelves. I didn't just survive them, I outlived them. And that, I think, is the sweetest revenge of all.